I was homeschooled, and while it was not the perfect experience, because no such thing exists, there were some things that my parents got very, very right, and I'm very thankful for. So that's what I'm going to share with you today. Hello, I am Christine. I am a second-generation homeschooler. I live in New Zealand, and my kids are ages 10, 8, and 6. So we've been homeschooling for about 6 years now, and I've been in the homeschool community for many, many years, something that I am very passionate about and love dearly, and I'm very grateful to have experienced. I did do a video a while ago on my homeschool regrets, which I can link for you here. You can go check those out. But I wanted to do a more positive spin on it today, and that is just the things that I believe my parents got really right, because I hope that this can be an encouragement to other homeschoolers. I know it's been an encouragement to me. It's helped boost my confidence, and I hope it will help boost yours. So I'm just gonna jump right in with number one. The first thing that my parents got right is that they really instilled discipline into us. And by discipline, I don't mean punishment. I mean having discipline, not relying on motivation to get things done, but actually being disciplined to get the work done. So there was not a single time that I can recall where my mom let me skip out on a math lesson or language arts or whatever because I was whining about how much I didn't enjoy it. That never happened in our home. Education was taken seriously. It was not something that was like flogged into us. It didn't destroy our love of learning or anything like that, but it was considered non-negotiable. This is what you do. You do your schoolwork, can do hard things, although that phrase wasn't really something that it wasn't something I ever heard my mom say. That is essentially the culture that was established in our home, that we take our responsibilities seriously, whether we feel like doing them or not, we get up and we do the work. That sounds very rigid, and I don't want it to come across as like there was no grace involved, because there absolutely was. You know, if you're sick or whatever, of course my parents didn't force us to do school, but I just really appreciate the work ethic that they built into our education, because it's something that I was able to apply then to everything else. I personally have not struggled with being consistent with teaching my children and educating them. It's not something that I have struggled with. I just am like, it's my job to homeschool them. I'm going to show up daily and I'm going to do that for them. But I do believe that a lot of that is from the expectation that I had because of what my parents did. So that's something they did super right. And I will say, I do think it's lacking in a lot of the messaging in the homeschool community now. I think sometimes we lean a little bit too far into grace and forget that actually having discipline to just do the everyday things day in and day out, whether we feel motivated or inspired to do it, is really, really vital, because our kids' education is very important. The second thing that my parents did right is building a love of literature and just a really lovely family culture of enjoying good books together. My parents were always encouraging us to read, but my mom did read alouds a lot with us. It's like my fondest memory of being homeschooled is just the books that she would read to us. Whenever we went on family holidays, we would always have an audiobook in the car, or she would read aloud to us, and my dad would even get into it. Like, we always talk about how she would get to the end of the chapter that was like a cliffhanger, and my dad was like, we'll carry on. So that's something that I just feel so inspired to also curate in my home with my kids, because I have such fond memories, and all of us siblings like now still talk about the things that we read together as a family and have like inside jokes and things like that. That's something they got really right, and it was so natural. It wasn't something that felt forced. It was just something that we enjoyed, and I'm really grateful for it. The third thing is that they outsourced when necessary. So when I was homeschooled, way back in the day, it was the early 2000s, and I did not have anything but dial-up internet until I left home at the age of, how old was I? Like 20 or 21. And then I got like broadband for the first time ever. It was super exciting. But up until that point, we had dial-up internet. We might have gotten satellite at some point, but it was like 5 gigs a month. So it was nothing. We didn't watch YouTube. We didn't, like, none of that happened. It was just for like checking your emails, maybe checking your Facebook quickly, and that was that, because we just didn't have access to it, which also meant we did not have access to a lot of online resources for education. And the teacher's manuals that my mom would have the answer to whatever, math problem, whatever it was, but not the guided steps as to how you achieve that result. And math was never my mom's strong subject. She will readily admit to that. She didn't even do high school math. And so that was a subject that she outsourced. There was a lady in our church who was a retired teacher, and she tutored me for however long. I'd go to her house once a week and we would do algebra together and then geometry. And then I think she actually did it for at least 2 of my other siblings. And I did really well with math as a result of that. So I think that's something they got very right. That is one of the biggest misconceptions by the non-homeschooling community, is that homeschool parents need to know everything about every subject they're going to teach. That is just categorically false. You do not. What you do need to know are your limits and where you do need to outsource and get help. Thankfully, in this modern age, we have a plethora of resources that are just readily at our fingertips. I mean, ChatGPT can tell you the answer to math questions and how to get to that result in seconds. Like, it's fantastic. So that's something my parents did well, and I think it's something that homeschool parents still need to be doing today, for sure. The fourth thing that my parents got right was my pathway into tertiary education. So I graduated my homeschool journey, and then I went on to achieve my Bachelor of Science in Nursing. I became a qualified nurse. And the way that my mom did that is she essentially worked backwards. We kind of knew what direction I was going to go with my tertiary education, and then she just catered my education to fill that role. However, we didn't follow the traditional pathway. We didn't use the New Zealand curriculum at the time. We used parts of it, but not all of it. And when we first applied to the local polytech where I was going to take my courses, they just were like, no, you don't have the qualifications. And so my mom went ahead and scheduled a meeting and brought a portfolio to them. And as soon as they saw the work that I had been doing in high school, they were like, absolutely yes. So I'm really grateful that my parents were very good at looking ahead to see what I would need to do, and that they weren't willing to just give up as soon as they met any sort of wall that they came up against. You know, my mom was creative enough and she stood up for us, and all of us siblings have done different things. 3 out of 4 of us went ahead and did tertiary education and achieved degrees and diplomas, etc., with no issues. So I think my parents handled it really well. I would say that the one thing my mom says that she would do differently is she would stress about it a whole lot less, because actually a lot of universities, a lot of tertiary education centers are more than willing to take on homeschool students, and you don't have to necessarily follow a traditional pathway in order to do that. In fact, just this week I saw on Facebook, I think it was Massey University was saying like, hey, homeschool students, like, here are the different ways that you can come and study here if you want to. So that was really cool and encouraging to see that. And I mean, back when I graduated was a long time ago now. So I'm glad to see things that are even more open. And my parents were very much like, you either get a full-time job or you go and study. There's like nothing else going on here. So we were, determined to do one or the other. And I'm really grateful for how they handled it. And yeah, they did a good job of getting me where I needed to be, and then I had the tools I needed to go ahead and further my study. And then the last thing, but maybe even the most important thing that my parents got right, and my mom specifically, because she was the one day in and day out educating us, is that she was really good at apologizing when she got things wrong. So this isn't specific to homeschooling, but I do think that it greatly impacts homeschool parents in general. This is absolutely something that could be applied to any parent. But it is specific to my homeschool journey because it's something that I remember, and there was absolutely conflict. I would say the number one thing that I hear from people when I tell them I homeschool is that, oh, I would never have the patience for that. And I always laugh about it because I'm like, I am not a patient person. And my mom absolutely laughs at that as well, because it's so foolish to think that you have to be this perfectly patient parent in order to homeschool and to homeschool well. So there was conflict and there were fights and there were all sorts of things, and she messed up at times. But the thing that she did consistently and she did really well was that she apologized and she humbled herself, and she would come to us and say, sorry, I shouldn't have done this. And that was so profound, and it made a world of difference to our relationship because it meant I could go to her with anything. I didn't feel like she was so far above me that she was out of reach, or that she could never understand what I had gone through or why I had messed up. My parents have been very, very good at being humble enough to admit that they are human and do things wrong as well. And I think it's really easy for us as parents to fall into this place of pride of like, I am the parent and you are the child, and you were acting in a way that made me yell or whatever, but actually it always comes back to us, and it always comes back to a choice that we have to make. And while we are going to mess up and we're not going to be perfect parents, we always have the opportunity to go and say sorry and to rectify the situation. And that is something that has stuck with me, and I think my parents did a very good job of, is just being humble and apologizing when they made mistakes, because homeschooling involves a whole bunch of flawed humans doing life together, and that's not always pretty, but it definitely has the potential for a lot of sanctifying and a lot of relationship growth, and I'm just so grateful for it. So that's my summary of the things that I feel like my parents did really right with my homeschool journey. There are a lot of other little things that I could mention, but I just wanted to keep it fairly short and sweet. I hope it's an encouragement to you if you are homeschooling or considering homeschooling, that you absolutely do not have to be a perfect parent. Your circumstances do not have to be perfect in order for you to have a really successful homeschooling experience with your kids. You just do the best that you can day in, day out. Recognize your limitations and seek help when you need to, and be humble, be kind, and love your kids. That's the example that I have from my parents, and I'm so grateful for it. So thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.
Had more of your smile. What if the wind could spread your love?